Let me get a little edgier here. We like to bash Oracle, and we like to bash the big enterprise software companies. You guys get your fair share of bashing over Harmony too, that sort of thing. But at the same time, I know that with the Eclipse Foundation as an example, IBM is the #1 corporate sponsor of committers, and Oracle is #2 in terms of the number of people who commit to those organizations. And so I see this trend in the marketplace where you see commoditization because of open source, and that benefits smaller companies and maybe even Microsoft at the same time in terms of the way that software gets bought and consumed. And so you look at that and say, is there a long-term threat to the open source community because of the kind of backlash in terms of people adopting these technologies and not buying the enterprise software products that fund the companies that put committers on these projects? And I wonder if you guys might be able to comment a little bit on, what is the long-term plan? Bob, we'll start with you in terms of, fighting or, working against this commoditization trend with how software is moving up the stack.
Well, so I think fundamentally, people have to realize the software industry isn't stagnant. So if the bottom is commoditizing, you damn well better be innovating a lot at the top, right? So that is, maybe the bottom gets broader, but there are more and more new ideas that are coming in at the top. And that's whether it's proprietary software or it's services, better content. Whatever the thing is that's no longer generic has to constantly be created, right? And so you have to ask yourself, what is your engine for that? What is your engine for innovation? And lots of people ask that. There's a whole industry around so-called open innovation, whether it's source code or whether it's better shampoo or things like this. So a lot of these principles that are related to open source apply much more widely to research and development and where this comes into it. Really though, when it comes to software, ultimately, you can create cheaper products if you want to, but really what ultimately wins is quality and quality of service, right? As the world shifts more to whether you call it software as a service or cloud, it's going to be performance, it's going to be uptime, right? Availability, reliability, all the security is a major, major thing. And these are the types of things that people are willing to pay for, right? They're willing to pay for good quality of service. And so mentally, you have to do that transition. And if you're paying for good quality of service, frankly, people may not care whether it's open source or not behind it. It just better run and better run securely. So we have to change what our industry is and focus on the services we're providing for customers and ultimately what they will pay for.
How's Red Hat surviving that transition?
I think Red Hat is doing quite well. Red Hat from the very beginning has had a very deep focus on open source. I think the biggest challenge for Red Hat has been that we're getting to the point where Linux definitely is becoming a commodity. And so if you're a company who is unjustly, I feel, just focused on their involvement within Linux and not the open source community in general, then you need to do some marketing and promotion about that as well. But personally, from a sort of developer point of view, I don't think commodity of anything is a really bad idea, because once that's done means, as Bob was saying, there's cool stuff that you can do on top of that. You don't need to worry about creating a service or a capability which is now commoditized. You can take that on faith, and then you can add other cool new features that make the assumption that that commodity is there. So I think that by embracing the facts that there are parts of open source which are becoming a commodity means that we're creating this snowball effect, and we're able to build on that rather than seeing commoditization as sort of like it's the death knell of open source. We've become so successful that it's not important anymore. There's no specialness associated to it anymore. And I think what we're just doing right now is like you've just tapped the surface of what's available.
Well, somebody who's on the other end of that value equation, how do you manage it?
Well, in terms of healthcare, the point I wanted to make is that I think that we are further back in the product development cycle, way further back than the ones that we talked about earlier today in the initial introductions. healthcare is the challenges we have, particularly in the research informatics area, where we're developing systems to assist the research process. So tissue biobanks, data warehouses for research, this is our area. We're just beginning to address the problems of making those systems true open source projects. So we're way further back in the development exercise. How can we take a project that has been championed by a particular hospital or a particular individual, reached a certain level, hit a wall, and actually turn that into a community-based open source project and progress on further. So that's the stage we're at, perhaps I think in healthcare, and it's a way further back. We're not talking about commoditization of this yet. We're talking about making them proper, truly fully fledged open source projects. So healthcare is a bit further back, I think.
Bryant, I'm going to come back to you because we saw that again at the infrastructure things are moving along pretty well, but even though we are seeing things like Android reach the desktop, there's still a low level of awareness of open source outside of the our professional community. And I see that in the education space as well. Basically, folks get trained. High schoolers get trained on how to use Office, and maybe they learn VB or C# or something like that if they are in a computer class. But that's about it. And there generally still seems to be a lot of distrust in the educational community around what open source means and what it does and how it works. And I wonder to what extent you see that and what kinds of things you're doing to combat that.
Well, in terms of mistrust in the education space about technology, you have to remember that this open source and computers are not the first thing to come through the door for those teachers. First of all, when radio came by, people said, education's solved. We just will broadcast the best lessons to the whole country. And then TV came and said, do we say radio? No, I meant TV. Now TV, we're just going to put a TV in the classroom, and we don't need teachers anymore. And then it was computers. And then we said, do we say computers? I meant multimedia. Remember CDs? Going to have the internet. No, So right now, when you walk in as a technologist, they're like, oh God, here he is again. And, so you sort of sit there, no, really, this time, the internet. But schools are, just coming out of the we can't trust the underlying technology. The printers don't work, the networks don't work because they never really allocated for it. So in the last 5-10 years, we're just coming up out of where the teachers will start to look. And remember, when I get to talk to these teachers, I get this tiny slice of their time because they're being asked to deal with discipline issues and food and all these things that they never signed up for. But it is exciting. If we could get to the point where they sort of distrust open source, that would be good because they know what it is. A huge number of people just simply don't. So a lot of my time is spent getting over the hurdles of it doesn't make a lot of sense to people, and I think we talked a little bit earlier today about who plays instruments and why would you do that if you're not paid? And teachers kind of go, oh, okay, and they sort of go, oh, I begin to get it. They're not in teaching for the money usually is the way that it works out. But once you get past that, the first thing they focus on is the money, which is great. That gets through the door. You talk to the superintendents, that sort of thing. But I think the really exciting thing is a lot of what you talked about in your last 2 slides. And I think that's what's going to make a huge difference in education over the next 5-10 years, is using the power of the excitement of working on something. There's a huge, as we all know, transformation going on in education. We have the old industrial model we have to change. We have to do that with a lot less money. So technology, curriculum is changing massively. In the last 10 years, it's been we don't need to teach tech. We just need to have it fully integrated into the classroom in math and science and history. I think that's changing, and I think that's for the better. And like South Carolina is a core curriculum state, so they are part of the 37 states that are adopting a core curriculum because we have to get a national thing. Now, as far as I can tell, talking to people, the technology, they're just getting math, and after 4 years getting math and English done, there'll be another 4 years for the other subjects. Technology, I think, is somewhere around 2020, and I just think that's way too late. So my hope is, particularly with working with people like this and bringing people into the curriculum development process, that by the time they finally get around to it, the open source community will have sort of said, well, we're kind of doing it, and it kind of works with all the stuff you're talking about for 21st century skills of team building, international, real project focus. So I'm Zonker aside, I'm fairly excited about what could happen in education over the next 10 years if we get everyone in this room working together. And Iain and I were talking about ways to do that last night. I'm fairly excited, so I'll stop.
So